So in the simulation based verification, it is the verification in which we generate different scenarios which are developed at random, and it has been given to the RTL, to the DUT, and whatever the waveform output has been generated, that has been collected, and that has been checked in an automated fashion. Let's take a very small case study for a counter design. So in the counter design, the specification says like it's a binary up down counter and to count from 0 to 15. Now the verification engineer, he will basically will be asking like what are the inputs and the outputs required for the counter. So the inputs and outputs required for the counter could be the clock, reset, and the cube output pins. Those are the basics ones. But it says like it's an up and down counter, which means there will be a pin for an up and down. Now the up and down pin could be a common pin, like when it is 0 it is up, when it is 1 it is down, or it could be two different pins also. The specification, if it has not mentioned, it could be required to mention like what is the clock frequency at which this counter is going to work, and what are the range of the clock frequency over which this would work. How will you define at in which clock frequencies this will work? It will be defined by whatever the AND and NAND gate has been used into the counter clock timing period that it supports. So depending on that, the clock frequency of the complete counter would be defined. Then what are the different kinds of reset that could be required? The resets could be an active high or active low. So what is the behavior of the counter when the reset is active high? What is the behavior of the counter when it is active low? What if the counter and the reset comes at the same time? What if I'm coming out of the reset and at that time itself the counter value is getting changed? So what are the scenarios that we can have with all this? It will come under the reset test case scenarios. It's a counter, so it looks like a very simple design. The counter, it mentions like at the initial, at the reset, it will have some value, not zero or not all zeros or not all ones. Let's say at the initial I have a value of 1. The counter starts with 1, then it counts up, then it goes to FF, and then it again roll backs to the 0. So where are we going to mention all those stuff? So along with the counter, what we'll be requiring is a simple register, and in that register we will be programming the initial value of that counter. Now once the register comes, there could be a logic required to load that register value into the counter, which means the counter has to be writable and readable also. The complexities to the counter. Now why this complexity needs to be added? Because if it's a simple counter, it could work for very simple application. But if that counter has to be used for more complex operations also, then that has to be taken care at the very first stage. I would say this could be a counter version 2, but all those stuffs has to be provided at the start in the version 1 itself, so that it can scale up to the version 2. So as a verification engineer, you also have to come up with all those plans that could be required going further. If this feature needs to be added, what are the placeholders where we can keep these stuffs? To add more, I mean, we would be needing like, is there any cycle delays while doing up and down? For example, let's say once I push the up or down button, so what happens if I do up counting and do a down counting while it's in the clock cycle? Let's say if it's in half clock cycle, and at that time itself, if I do a down, get reflected immediately in the next clock cycle, or it will take one more clock cycle to end. So all these complex scenarios comes up once you sit down and understand what exactly, I mean, what are the worst case scenarios that can happen. So as a verification engineer, it's your job to come up with more than this kind of a scenarios. To give you your very brief idea, what exactly are we going to develop in a test bench, or how exactly a test bench looks like. Now we just took an example of a counter. Verify this counter. What would be we will be having is the duty, whatever we are seeing, that is our counter design. Whatever the signal has been there, that's basically an interface. From our test bench, basically we will be driving some signals, we will be monitoring some signals. Whatever the signals that we are driving, those will be driven by a driver logic. And whatever the signals that are coming out of the duty, that will be given to the monitor for doing a check. I'll going back and forth in this diagram to explain you better. If you see, there is a generator in the scenario level. So the job of a generator is basically to generate all kind of scenarios that we are thinking of. Then there is a driver. So what does basically a driver does? Whatever the scenarios we want to generate, that has been passed to the driver, and the driver, according to the protocol, he will be driving it to the DUT. Now driver can be at the functional level and it can be at the command level. This is little more complex for the more complex kind of a scenarios. For a counter thing, we can have a simple one driver. There will be a checker. Now, as you see in the diagram, we have placed the checker at the two places. One is at the driver end and one is at the monitor end. Whatever the checker is there at the driver end, he will make sure like whatever the driver is driving to the duty, that itself is a correct thing or not. What if the driver itself is doing something wrong? So the checker at the driver end, he will catch it there itself. The checker at the monitor end will be monitoring the output of the duty. So whatever the output of the duty is there, if it is correct or not, that will be checked by that. And the monitor basically will be monitoring, it will be just a monitor. It will be just observing the signals and passing it to the next blocks. Then we'll be have something like a self check. In a self check, what we do, we know like what we are driving and we know what has been monitored. Then in a self check, we know like what has been the actual signal and what is the expected signal. We will just do a cross check of like, is the output coming is expected or it's not expected. On the extreme right, if you see, there is something written as a functional coverage. So what does a functional coverage basically does? A functional coverage basically makes sure like whatever the scenarios that we wanted to cover, all those scenarios has been covered or not. This is basically simple test bench looks like. Now, if you see in the very top level, there is a test A and there are multiple blocks of it. Now there are multiple blocks of it because we will be having a different kinds of test cases. Now each test case will be generating for each scenarios. Those scenarios generation, we can have a directed also, or it can be completely random also. What does it means is I can have a completely directed kind of a test case scenarios. For example, do all up counting, do all down counting. But what if I make it a random? For example, I'll do some up counting till random number, then do a down counting till random number, and then again do up counting for some random numbers. And I can do a lot of mix and match of all those stuff. So that's why we will always have multiple test case scenarios. So this is how basically our test bench looks like. Now this has been taken just for a very simple thing. If there is something like a master slave kind of a stuff, then little more complexities gets added to this. That's what basically I have tried to mention in these slides. So what the basically generator does, it generates stimulus required for the test bench. The driver, it basically drives the signal on the interface as per the protocol. And what monitor basically will be doing, it will be monitoring it, checking for the protocol violations. And checker will basically be doing like a data integrity checks. So if you see, there is a one block called as a properties, which has been directly been signaled out of the duty. So what exactly the property does? Properties are something which are continuously running on the duty or on the signals. They are something running in the background, which basically makes sure like the driver, the test bench and the duty both are following the protocol very accurately and in every clock cycles. To rewrite the properties, we basically use like system verilog assertions or PSL kind of a languages. That's how basically a complete test bench looks like. So what properties will be doing, it will be responsible for timing related checks on each clock cycle. As we discussed, self check, it checks against the transaction sent from the duty and received on the monitor. And coverage, it will make sure like all the scenarios are getting covered. Test case, basically it will be defined the scenarios that we want to check. So let's now come up to the what are the career paths and opportunities as an ASIC verification engineer. So to briefly define, ASIC verification engineers can be broadly categorized into two things. Like one is like an IP verification, and the other could be like an SOC verification. In the IP verification, basically you will be doing more of a block level verification, so that you have to be completely thorough on that block. For example, let's say a very small protocol like a AHB, ABB bus protocols, or let's say I2C or SPI bus protocols. So whoever guys verifying the I2C or SPI, he has to be completely thorough in that protocol, and he has to know it in and out. In an SOC level verification, that guy may not have a complete thorough knowledge of I2C or SPI bus protocols. He has to understand it how it works, but what he has to more understand is what are the effect of the performance of these I2C SPI on the complete chip level activities. For example, is the I2C SPI connected to some other block which works at a higher clock frequency than what we are driving at the SPI? If it is, then is it going to be bottleneck? If it is going to be bottleneck, what exactly are the issues? Is those issues okay, or it will be a very big issues? So that kind of stuff the SOC verification engineer has to come up. To tell you more about would be like basically there are two types of company, or maybe three types of industries. One is like a service based companies, others are like product based, and third could be like an EDA vendors. In the service based companies, basically they will be taking a project from the big product based companies. They will be making sure like whatever the blocks has been assigned to them, or whatever the a complete chip design has been assigned to them, that is bug free, and it has doesn't have any issues. They would also have their in-house IP and VIP development also. To give you some examples, would be like a Miraflor Technologies, eInfo chips, Arasan chips. So those what they do, they're in-house and offshore centers also. So they will be basically having some part of a bigger chip, and they will be developing it completely. In a product-based companies, what they do, they will be completely developing their own chips. They won't be much bothered about the small IPs that we are developing. They will be taking the IPs from the third party, integrating it into their SOC architecture, and then doing the verification. Their verification would be more on the performance, then the data part delays, any bottleneck issues, what are the use cases, what the customer is actually going to use. So all those kind of stuffs that will be basically will be verified in the product based company. Now there are some companies such as Synopsys, Mentor Graphics, and Cadence. So they what they basically do, they develop the tools those are required for the verification, for the RTL synthesis, for the timing closures, layout, floor planning. For those, we require very high complex tools. So they will be basically will be developing those tools. Apart from that, to bundle a package, they also will be having their in-house IP and VIP development. So that with the tool, you can have their IPs also, which you can easily integrate, manage, and verify also. To talk about the skill sets those are required, the first I would say is like a really good debugging skills. To give you an example about the debugging skills, you should be able to pinpoint where exactly the issue is, and you should be able to give a very strong fix to that. If you fix something and again some after some time the issue pops up, it means like you haven't considered all the scenarios that could happen with this fix. So this again comes with an practice. But I would say if you are really good in debugging, then half of the part of the as a verification engineer is done. Apart from that, some soft skills would be required. The soft skills will be basically will be required would be like a really good written and communication or oral communication. Communication is important because if you found some issue, you have to clearly explain it to the architects, to the RTL designers, to the stakeholders, like what exactly this issue is, why it is coming, how it is coming. If you fix it also, how it was fixed, and why now it won't come again, that also has to be communicated very properly. So this communication is of utmost importance. And now as we are all working from home and mostly like working remotely, it becomes of utmost importance, like we have a really very good written communication. Yeah, that's it from my side.